Hello, welcome to another video. Please like, share and subscribe for more amazing story. True God in Another Worlds, Tensura x Tbate, by Tempest_King_20. Chapter 63 A Moment of Confusion. Rimuru Pav. I narrowed my eyes at Cynthia, as I asked with a tinge of skepticism, "Are you serious now?" The warm lighting of her office cast flickering shadows across her composed features as she delicately sipped her steaming Earl Grey tea. Cynthia set her cup down with a soft clink, the aroma of bergamot filling the tense air between us. "I'm completely serious, Rimuru," she replied, her eyes meeting mine with unwavering conviction. A small, knowing smile played on her lips, betraying her confidence in this proposal and, I had to admit, irritating me further. This festival could be exactly what we need to bring the Academy together. I sighed heavily, running my fingers through my hair. The weight of recent events pressed down on me, making Cynthia's suggestion seem like a pipe dream at best, and a disaster waiting to happen at worst. "Where did you even get this idea?" I questioned, leaning back in my chair. "It seems risky, given the current climate." Cynthia's smile widened, clearly sensing my reluctance. "Well, that's because of your girlfriend, actually. She and Sylvia came to me with this suggestion, and I thought it was a wonderful idea, so I agreed." Her eyes sparkled with amusement, probably at my shocked expression. My brow furrowed as I processed this information, a mix of surprise and concern washing over me. The Academy had been a powder keg of tension lately, with clashes between noble human students and their elven and dwarven peers. The memory of shouting matches in the hallways and barely avoided fistfights in the courtyard was still fresh in my mind. "What's the problem with that, Captain?" Claire chimed in, her expression thoughtful but her eyes sharp. "Sounds like a great idea to me." I turned to Claire, surprised by her support. Usually, she was the voice of caution in our group. "You can't be serious, Claire. You've seen how bad things have gotten. What if the festival just gives them another excuse to fight?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, her optimism shining through despite the recent troubles. "I think Claire's right, Rimuru. A festival could be just what the Academy needs right now. It might help everyone remember why we're all here together." I felt a twinge of frustration. Didn't they understand the risks? "Lily, I appreciate your optimism, but..." Tess cut me off, her voice soft but firm. "Exactly. It would be a great opportunity for the students to relax and take their minds off the recent incidents." I could see the worry in her eyes, remembering how she'd had to break up a particularly nasty argument between students just last week. Maybe if they're having fun together, they'll forget about their differences for a while. I crossed my arms, still feeling uneasy about the proposal. The knot in my stomach tightened as I thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Seriously guys? With the recent events, I don't think we should be doing something like this. The memory of tearful students, accusations of prejudice, and the disappointed faces of teachers weighed heavily on my mind. What if it backfires? We could end up making things worse. Cynthia's expression hardened with resolve, her earlier playfulness giving way to determination. "On the contrary, Rimuru. With the recent events, we have to do this to lift the students' spirits and help them move past the incidents." Her words carried the weight of her years of experience, making me question my own judgment. Sometimes, the riskiest move is the one that pays off the most. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to believe in Cynthia's vision, to hope that this festival could be the turning point we needed. But another part of me, the part that had seen the worst of the recent conflicts, was terrified of what could go wrong. Reluctantly, I nodded, knowing that arguing further would be futile. A mix of resignation and hope battled within me as I said, "Fine, but if anything goes wrong, it's on you, Cynthia." My tone carried a warning, but also a plea for her to be right about this. "I hope you know what you're doing." Cynthia chuckled, seemingly unfazed by my caution. "Don't worry, Rimuru, I've got everything under control. It's going to be a great festival, I promise." Her unwavering confidence was both reassuring and exasperating, leaving me torn between trusting her judgment and preparing for the worst. "But what can we do at this festival?" Lily asked, her brow furrowed in contemplation as she turned to Cynthia. "It needs to be something special if we wanted to make a difference." Cynthia leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. "That's why I gathered you all here, the student council presidents and the disciplinary committee. I want to hear your thoughts on this matter. You can suggest anything that comes to your mind," she said, her gaze sweeping at us. Her voice carried a mix of authority and encouragement that never failed to impress me. You know the students better than anyone. What do you think would bring them together? I glanced around at the faces of my friends, wondering what ideas they might come up with. To my surprise, it was Claire who spoke up first, her eyes gleaming with a competitive spark. How about a tournament? I couldn't help but quirk an eyebrow, slightly amused by Claire's unexpected proposal. Oh, that's a good idea. I didn't expect that from you, Claire, I said, a hint of teasing in my voice. Claire huffed, but the small smile on her face betrayed her satisfaction. Well, I do have good ideas sometimes, you know. Don't act so shocked, Rimuru. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. A tournament could showcase everyone's strengths, regardless of their race or background. It might help them see each other as individuals rather than just human, or elf, or dwarf. Cynthia nodded in agreement, her eyes lighting up. A tournament does sound exciting. It will showcase the students' skills and provide some healthy competition. An idea began to form in my mind as I listened to the others. I cleared my throat, drawing their attention. Hey, what about setting aside some time for a disciplinary committee tournament? I suggested, my tone casual but my eyes sharp. Given the recent events, it might be good to showcase the strength of the disciplinary committee. Could help settle some of the students' doubts. Cynthia's eyes lit up with approval. Yes, we should definitely do that, she said, nodding enthusiastically. In fact, we could even allow parents to attend. I've been getting quite a few inquiries from concerned parents lately. This could be a good way to reassure them about the Academy's security measures. We all nodded in agreement, a moment of contemplative silence falling over the room. I found myself running through potential scenarios in my head, considering both the benefits and the risks of such an event. Lily's soft voice broke the silence. How long will the festival be? She asked, absently twirling a strand of hair around her finger. 3 days, Cynthia replied, a hint of excitement creeping into her usually composed voice. I'm planning to have a party on the last night of the festival. I couldn't help but chuckle, raising an eyebrow. Let me guess, CL's idea too? I asked, already knowing the answer. My girlfriend's love for grand celebrations was no secret among our group. Cynthia chuckled, her eyes twinkling with amusement. You know her well, don't you? Yes, the party was CL's suggestion. I shook my head, a mix of exasperation and fondness for CL washing over me. Of course it was, I muttered, a small smile tugging at my lips despite my attempt to remain neutral. I swear, if there isn't at least one party a month, she starts to get restless. Lily leaned forward, her face brightening. Oh, a party sounds wonderful. We could have music, dancing, and food. Tess chimed in, her eyes wide with enthusiasm. We could have a variety of dishes from different cultures. It'd be a great way to celebrate our diversity. Claire nodded, her expression thoughtful. That's actually not a bad idea. It could help bridge some of the gaps between different groups. I found myself considering the idea, turning it over in my mind. It's got potential, I admitted, my tone measured. But we'll need to be careful with the planning. We don't want any misunderstandings or conflicts. Cynthia nodded, her expression serious. Of course, Rimuru. That's why I want all of you involved in the planning process. Your input will be crucial in making this festival a success. All right. Let's recap, I said, ticking off points on my fingers. We've got a tournament, including one for the disciplinary committee, a variety of cultural food stalls, and a party on the last night. Anything else we should consider? Tess spoke up, her voice soft but confident. What about some kind of art exhibition? We have a lot of talented students who might appreciate the chance to showcase their work. Excellent suggestion, Tess, Cynthia said approvingly. We could even make it a competition with prizes. As the ideas continued to flow, I found myself listening intently, weighing each suggestion carefully. While part of me was still wary of potential issues, I had to admit that the festival was shaping up to be an interesting event. As the meeting drew to a close, I stood up, stretching my arms above my head. All right, I said, my tone businesslike but not unkind. Looks like we've got our work cut out for us. Let's make sure this festival goes off without a hitch. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the polished mahogany table, feeling the cool, smooth surface under my skin. The rich scent of wood polish mingled with the lingering aroma of coffee from our earlier meeting. So, that's why we, the disciplinary committee and the student council, are tasked with making the necessary preparations, I explained, my voice steady despite the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. Really, I confirmed, watching as Art's shoulders slumped in resignation, his uniform wrinkling slightly with the movement. He let out a deep sigh, running a hand through his tousled brown hair. You know, this will take a lot of work, Art said, his tone somewhere between a statement and a question. His fingers drummed a restless rhythm on the armrest of his chair. I know, I replied, my voice calm but my fingers unconsciously tapping against the table's surface, mirroring Art's nervous energy. Art's eyes narrowed slightly, the corners of his mouth turning down. And that means no downtime, he added, his gaze fixed on me as if waiting for me to back down. The tension in the room seemed to thicken, almost palpable. I met his stare, unflinching. I know that too. My words hung in the air, heavy with implication. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly as he crossed his arms. And it also means more paperwork, Art said, a hint of challenge in his voice. His jaw clenched, a telltale sign of his growing frustration. I hesitated for a moment, my resolve wavering slightly. The thought of endless forms and reports loomed in my mind. I know, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Art threw his hands up in exasperation, the sudden movement causing a few papers to flutter off the table. Then why the hell did you agree to this? I sighed, my shoulders sagging slightly. Well, I didn't have much say in this. The director was going to do it whether I liked it or not, I explained, a hint of frustration creeping into my voice. Suddenly, Doradrea's eyes lit up with excitement. She leaned forward, nearly bouncing in her seat, her long orange and white hair swaying with the movement. That's great news. It means we can duel against each other, right? So I agree to the festival, she exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. Theodore nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. His usually immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled, a few strands of dark hair falling across his forehead. I agree with Doradrea, he said, his usually calm demeanor tinged with anticipation. Curtis pinched the bridge of his nose, exasperation clear in his voice. Both of you. You just sparred yesterday, he sighed, looking at the two battle-hungry individuals. Doradrea's grin only widened, her eyes sparkling with mischief. But, maybe kings and lances will come, right? This is a great opportunity for us, she insisted, her voice rising with excitement. She leaned forward so far she was practically out of her seat. Fairith perked up at this, his interest piqued. His emerald eyes gleamed with curiosity. Oh, you're right, he mused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. The sunlight caught on his earring, sending small rainbows dancing across the table. Kathleen's brow furrowed in concentration, her lips pursed. If the kings come, we'll need to ensure everything is running smoothly and that security is tight, she said, her voice low and serious. Tess nodded in agreement, her hair catching the light as she moved. We can't afford any incidents during the festival, especially if important guests are attending, she added, her voice firm. Her fingers tightened around the pen she was holding. I raised my hand to calm the growing chatter, the sound of my palm hitting the air seeming to cut through the noise. You're right, and that's why, to make sure everything goes well, the director has assigned some people to help us, I explained, my voice rising slightly to be heard over the murmurs. As if on cue, the door swung open with a soft creak, silencing the room. All heads turned towards the entrance, curiosity and anticipation thick in the air. It seems they've arrived, I said, a hint of relief in my voice. Jackson strode into the room, his presence commanding attention. Laura trailed behind, trying to match his confident stride but looking slightly out of place. Gideon shuffled in next, his shoulders hunched and his expression sour. Professor Glory burst in last, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I cleared my throat, drawing everyone's eyes. Professor Jackson, Professor Gideon, and Professor Glory will be assisting us in the preparations for the festival, I announced, gesturing towards the new arrivals. I felt Laura's gaze on me because I didn't mention her name, but I chose to ignore it. They will be overseeing different aspects of the event to ensure everything runs smoothly. Jackson stepped forward, his sharp gaze sweeping across the room. Some of the younger staff members visibly straightened under his scrutiny. Good afternoon, everyone, he said, his voice carrying easily. I look forward to working with all of you to make this festival a success. His words were met with a mix of nods and nervous smiles. Professor Glory couldn't contain her enthusiasm any longer. She clapped her hands together, her eyes bright. "Oh, this is going to be simply marvelous," she exclaimed. "I've always wanted to be part of a grand festival. Just think of all the wonderful displays we could set up. The music, the food, the performances." Gideon, still hunched over as if carrying an invisible weight, let out a long-suffering sigh. "It's just more work," he grumbled, his voice low and gravelly. "More noise, more chaos, more chances for things to go wrong." Glory turned to him, undeterred by his pessimism. "Oh, come now, Gideon. Where's your sense of adventure? This is a chance to show off the best of our academy." Gideon's frown deepened. "Adventure? Ha! I'd rather have a quiet day in my lab than deal with hordes of overexcited students and nosy parents." I stepped in, hoping to mediate. "Professor Gideon, your expertise will be crucial in ensuring the safety of all the demonstrations and exhibits. And Professor Glory, your enthusiasm will be perfect for organizing the cultural events." Glory beamed at me, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Oh, thank you, I've got so many ideas already. We could have a magical artifact showcase, and maybe even a historical reenactment of." Gideon cut her off with a grunt, his hunched posture making him look even more disgruntled. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Safety first, frivolities second." Glory's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. Of course. We'll work together to make sure everything is both fun and safe." The room buzzed with anticipation as the faculty members outlined their areas of responsibility and tasks to be carried out. Lily surprised everyone by suggesting, "What if we set up a mentoring program? Older students could guide the younger ones through the festival preparations." "Brilliant idea, Lily," Kara exclaimed, giving her colleague an encouraging pat on the back. Lily blushed at the praise but looked pleased. Jackson, who had been silently observing, suddenly spoke up. "Before we get too carried away, there's something you all need to know. Director Goodsky told me the festival will be held a month from now." He folded his arms and closed his eyes, bracing for the reaction. A collective gasp filled the room. Lily's eyes widened in shock. "That's too short a period of time," she said, wringing her hands nervously. Sierra nodded in agreement. "You're right, the announcement of the festival was shocking enough, but now we have to do it in just 1 month?" She ran a hand through her hair, looking stressed. I sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. "Tessia," I said, turning to the student council representative, "can I rely on the student council to announce it?" Tessia straightened up, her face set with determination. "Of course, it's our job, after all," she nodded firmly. "We'll make sure every student knows their role." Art and the others exchanged looks, a mixture of excitement and apprehension evident on their faces. Kathleen, ever the pragmatist, started jotting down notes. "We'll need to create a timeline, delegate tasks, set up regular check-ins." Laura's cheerful voice cut through the tension in the room. "Come on, guys. This festival's gonna be a blast. Why the long faces?" Art raised an eyebrow at her, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one drowning in paperwork." Laura's eyes sparkled with mischief as she retorted, "Oh please, paperwork is my middle name. I eat stacks of forms for breakfast." "Is that so?" Jackson interjected, his stern face betraying a hint of amusement. "Then I'm sure you won't mind taking on the task of coordinating all the interdepartmental communication." Laura's confident facade cracked for a split second before she recovered. "Nice try, Professor J, but I'm not falling for that one. I've got my hands full keeping you in line." Jackson's eyebrows shot up. "Keeping me in line? I'd like to see you try, young lady." The room erupted in laughter, the earlier tension dissolving. Even Kathleen's serious expression softened into a small smile. Professor Glory was practically bouncing in her seat with excitement, while Gideon merely rolled his eyes, muttering something about frivolous nonsense. As the laughter died down, I raised my hands to regain attention. "All right," I said, my tone now warmer. "Now that we're all here, let's start dividing up the tasks. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and not much time to do it. Professor Glory, perhaps you could start by sharing some of your ideas for the cultural events?" Glory's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "Oh, I thought you'd never ask. I was thinking we could have a magical artifact scavenger hunt, a talent show showcasing different magical disciplines, and maybe even a historical fashion show. As Glory launched into an enthusiastic explanation, I noticed Gideon hunching even further in his chair, a look of long-suffering patience on his face. He caught my eye and mouthed, "Save me," causing me to stifle a chuckle. I closed my eyes, letting the gentle breeze caress my face. The soft whisper of wind through leaves was like nature's own lullaby. When I opened them again, I took in the garden around me. It was like stepping into a painting, all soft colors and peaceful vibes. The leaves rustled softly, creating a soothing rhythm, and birds chirped in the distance, their melodies intertwining in a natural symphony. It was exactly what I needed to chill out. After all the crazy stuff that had been going down, this quiet moment felt like a gift from the universe. I leaned back on the wooden bench, feeling it creak slightly under my weight. The wood was warm from the sun, and I could smell its earthy scent mixed with the fragrance nearby of flowers. My mind wandered to the upcoming festival and all the planning we still had to do. It was weird how the garden's calm seemed to make all the drama at the academy feel far away, like a distant storm on the horizon. I couldn't help but think about Agrona and his sneaky spies. The way they'd tricked the noble kids into attacking the elves and dwarves was quite clever, I had to admit. It was a perfect way to mess up the shaky friendship between the three races. The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth, like biting into an unripe fruit. The thought of the festival made me nervous, my stomach doing little flips. What if Agrona uses it to cause more trouble? That's why I wasn't sure about having it at all. The last thing I wanted was to wreck the relationship between the races that we just started building. It felt like trying to build a house of cards in a windstorm. But I'm sure Cynthia knows this, which is why I'm still baffled as to why she insists on having a festival. What's worse is that Seal was the one who made the suggestion. The whole situation feels like a puzzle with missing pieces. I stood up, my legs a bit stiff from sitting, and started walking along the garden path. The stone was cool under my feet, a nice contrast to the warm air. Little flowers brushed against my legs as I went, leaving traces of pollen on my pants. The whole place smelled amazing. Like earth and flowers and fresh air all mixed together, it was like nature's own perfume. And then, there she was. Sylvia stood before me like a vision, her ethereal presence casting a spell over the garden. Her shimmering white hair billowed in the gentle breeze, framing her delicate features like a halo. It caught the sunlight, creating a soft glow around her. Her eyes, a mesmerizing shade of crystal, were fixed intently on the single rose she cradled in her hands. Those eyes seemed to hold secrets of the universe, deep and mysterious. Lost in her own reverie, she seemed to be in perfect harmony with the beauty that surrounded her, like a fairy tale princess come to life. I called out to her, my voice carried away by the breeze, but she didn't seem to hear me. I frowned, worried, and moved closer. The soft crunch of gravel under my feet seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet garden, like thunder in the silence. When I touched her shoulder, feeling the softness of her skin under my fingertips, Sylvia's reaction was explosive. Whoa! She spun around, her violet eyes wide with shock. Her chest heaved as if she'd run a marathon, and I could see her pulse racing in her throat. Rimuru. You scared me half to death. Don't sneak up behind me like that. Despite her soft voice, I could hear the tremor of surprise in it, like a ripple in a calm pond. I held up my hands in a placating gesture, feeling guilty for startling her, but I didn't sneak up. I called your name several times, but you didn't hear me. Is everything okay? You seem really distracted. My concern colored my words, making them come out more forcefully than I intended. Sylvia's face softened, a rueful smile playing on her lips. The sunlight caught in her hair, turning it to spun gold. It was mesmerizing, like watching a sunset. Oh, I must have been lost in thought, Rimuru. My apologies for not hearing you earlier. She gently placed the rose she'd been holding back in its place, her movements graceful and deliberate. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, studying her carefully. The distant look in her eyes didn't match her usual composed demeanor. It was like looking at a familiar painting and noticing a new detail for the first time. Lost in thought, huh? That's not like you. Is something bothering you? Sylvia's smile was warm, though I noticed a flicker of sadness in her expression. It was like watching a cloud pass over the sun, brief but noticeable. It's okay. I was just thinking about the past. Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken memories, like mist clinging to the ground at dawn. We began to walk together through the garden, our footsteps in sync. The path wound between beds of flowers, each more vibrant than the last. The air was thick with the sweet scent of blooms, and butterflies fluttered from petal to petal. Sylvia bent down to pick up a fallen rose, its petals a deep, velvety red that seemed to glow in the soft afternoon light. As she twirled the flower between her slender fingers, a bittersweet smile crossed her lips. Her eyes seemed to look beyond the garden, into a time and place I couldn't see. The sunlight caught in her hair, creating a halo effect that made her look almost otherworldly. It's funny, she mused, her voice soft and thoughtful, like a gentle breeze, how a simple flower can bring back so many memories. I nodded, understanding all too well the power of unexpected reminders. The weight of my own past pressed against my chest for a moment. The past has a way of resurfacing when we least expect it, I replied, my own thoughts drifting to moments long gone. But, I don't think it's worth staying stuck in the past. Sylvia smiled softly at my words, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and contemplation. The azure of her irises seemed to deepen, like twilight settling in. You're right, Rimuru. Dwelling on the past can hold us back from embracing the present and moving forward. She paused, a thoughtful expression crossing her features, her brow furrowing slightly. Thank you for the reminder. I needed that. I'm here anytime, I said, feeling a warmth spread through my chest at her words. As we continued our stroll, the garden path opened up to a small clearing with a bubbling fountain at its center. The sound of water provided a soothing backdrop to our conversation, like nature's own music. Sylvia's expression turned serious, her brow furrowing slightly. Actually, I was also thinking about recent events. To tell you the truth, I'm a little worried. I tried to reassure her, my voice calm and steady, like a rock in a stormy sea. You don't have to worry too much. Everything is under control. Sylvia's eyebrows shot up, a hint of amusement dancing in her eyes. Under control? Can you say that about your messy hair? She reached out, playfully ruffling my already disheveled locks. Her touch was gentle, almost motherly. I couldn't help but laugh, running a hand through my hair self-consciously. The strands felt rough under my fingers, reminding me of how long it had been since I'd properly taken care of myself. Haha, well, it's because of all the paperwork. You know how it is. I sighed, thinking of the mountain of documents waiting for me. As you're aware, the Academy will be holding a festival soon. I know, Sylvia nodded, her expression turning thoughtful. A slight breeze rustled her hair, making it shimmer in the sunlight. I was with Seal when it was decided. I groaned inwardly at the mention of Seal. That's the problem. Why didn't you try to stop her? Sylvia's lips quirked into a wry smile, her eyes twinkling with a mix of exasperation and fondness. Rimuru, do you really think I could do that? I've learned it's best to let her follow her own path, even if it means causing a bit of chaos along the way. I stood there, thinking on Sylvia's response. The fountain bubbled in the background, its constant rhythm oddly comforting. She had a point, even if it frustrated me at times. Seal was a force of nature, and trying to rein her in was like trying to catch the wind in a net. I sighed, running a hand through my hair again, trying to gather my thoughts. I get what you're saying, I said after a moment, looking at Sylvia with a small smile. Seal has her own way of doing things, that's for sure. But with everything that's been happening lately, I can't help but worry about what might go down at the festival. Sylvia's expression softened, her eyes meeting mine with understanding. I know, Rimuru. The festival could be a turning point for us, for better or for worse. You're right, and since Agrona has made his move, I guess it's my turn now, I said, with a smile that felt more confident than I actually felt. Your turn, huh? Sylvia raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glint in her eyes. The sun caught her hair again, making it look like spun gold. Oh, right. Speaking of recent incidents. She stopped and turned to face me, her entire demeanor changing. I could see the frown on her face, her brows knitted together, with a mix of anger and worry in her eyes. The sudden shift in her mood was like a cloud passing over the sun. Why didn't you tell me that Lloyd and the girls were attacked? Oh. You knew. HMPH, of course I would know. Her frown deepened and she folded her arms across her chest, her posture radiating disappointment. Lena and Anna told me about it. I felt like they were hiding something from me, so with a little pressure they confessed to me. Her blue eyes bored into mine, demanding an answer. But don't evade my question, why didn't you tell me? Well. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling the warmth of embarrassment creep up my skin. My eyes darted around the garden, taking in the vibrant colors of the flowers, anything to avoid Sylvia's piercing gaze. "You've been worrying a lot lately, so I didn't want to make you worry more." I took a deep breath, the sweet scent of nearby roses filling my lungs. "You've been enjoying your time here, and I didn't want to ruin your fun. I didn't want to ruin your bright smile." My voice softened as I said this, and I finally met her eyes. Sylvia's expression softened, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of understanding and something deeper, something that made my heart flutter. Her eyes, like blue gems, seemed to sparkle in the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. The warm glow cast on her face highlighted the gentle curve of her cheek, the delicate line of her jaw. I found myself mesmerized by the way her hair caught the light, shimmering like spun gold. "Rimuru," she said softly, taking a step closer. The space between us seemed to crackle with energy. "I appreciate that you were trying to protect me, but please, don't keep things from me. We're in this together, remember?" I nodded, suddenly very aware of how close we were standing. The subtle scent of her perfume, something floral and delicate, washed over me. "You're right. I'm sorry, Sylvia. I promise I'll be more open with you from now on." She smiled, and I felt my heart skip a beat. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. My fingers brushed against her skin, soft as silk. Her breath caught, a small gasp escaping her lips, and I realized my hand was still resting on her cheek. We stood there, frozen in the moment. I could feel the warmth of her body, hear the quickening of her breath. The world around us seemed to fade away, the sounds of the garden muffling until all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. The flowers, the trees, even the bubbling fountain. Everything blurred into the background, leaving just the two of us in this small clearing. Sylvia's gem-like eyes flicked down to my lips, then back up to meet my gaze. I found myself leaning in, drawn by some invisible force. Our faces were inches apart, our breaths mingling in the space between us. I could see every detail of her face. The light dusting of freckles across her nose, the flecks of darker blue in her eyes. Just as it seemed we might close that final distance, Sylvia's eyes widened. A blush spread across her cheeks, painting them a rosy pink. She took a quick step back, but her hand found mine, our fingers intertwining almost of their own accord. "Oh, I just remembered," she said, her voice a bit higher than usual, slightly breathless. "I have a class starting soon. I should probably get going before I'm late." I blinked, coming back to reality. The garden slowly came back into focus around us. "Oh, right. Of course." My voice sounded husky, even to my own ears. Sylvia gave me a shy smile, her eyes sparkling with an unspoken promise. Our hands lingered together for a moment longer before she slowly pulled away. "I'll see you later, Rimuru," she said, her voice soft and warm. She turned and hurried down the path, but not before casting one last glance over her shoulder, her eyes meeting mine with a look that set my heart racing anew. I watched her go, the sunlight catching her hair as she moved, creating a halo effect. Even after she disappeared from view, I stood there, my skin still tingling where she had touched me. "Geez, what was I thinking?" I muttered, running a hand through my hair. The almost kiss with Sylvia kept replaying in my mind, each replay sending a fresh wave of butterflies through my stomach. I couldn't shake the memory of her warm breath on my face, the way her gem-like eyes had flickered to my lips, the soft touch of her hand in mine. The mix of excitement and confusion was overwhelming, but underneath it all was a warmth, a joy that I couldn't quite put into words. A rustle in the nearby bushes broke through my spiral of thoughts. I let out a long sigh, recognizing the presence immediately. The familiar aura, the slight magical disturbance in the air. It could only be one person. Of course she'd be here. I shouldn't have expected anything less from Seal, always one step ahead, always watching. "All right, Seal. I know you're there. Come on out," I called out, bracing myself for whatever mischief she had in store this time. Seal emerged from her hiding spot, leaves stuck in her vibrant hair and a mischievous grin plastered across her face. She looked like a forest sprite caught in the act of mischief-making. As always, her presence brought a mix of comfort and exasperation. I couldn't help but wonder how long she'd been there, what she'd seen. "Oh, Rimuru," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "You should see your face right now. You look like you've seen a ghost. Or maybe just a really pretty girl." I felt my cheeks warm at her teasing. Even after all this time, Seal still had a knack for catching me off guard. Her words hit closer to home than I'd like to admit. The memory of Sylvia's nearness, the almost kiss, flashed through my mind, making my heart race. "What are you up to now, Seal?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level despite the storm of emotions inside me. Embarrassment, confusion, and a hint of lingering excitement from my encounter with Sylvia all swirled together. "Oh, my dear. I was just enjoying the show," she said, her voice lilting with amusement. She sauntered closer, each step deliberate and graceful. I found myself both drawn to her presence and wanting to step back, unsure of how to handle her knowing gaze. I felt heat rising to my cheeks but tried to keep my voice steady. "Show? What are you talking about?" Even as I said it, I knew it was futile. Seal had always been able to read me like an open book. I wondered if she could see the turmoil in my heart, the confusion about my feelings for Sylvia. Ciel's grin widened as she closed the distance between us. Her eyes sparkled with mischief and something else. Was that concern? Oh, please. That moment with Sylvia? The tension? The almost kiss? It was like watching a romantic drama unfold right before my eyes. I half expected dramatic music to start playing. Her words brought the memory rushing back. Sylvia's closeness, the anticipation, the way time seemed to slow down. I felt my heart skip a beat. It was nothing, I stammered, my heart racing at the memory. Just a moment of confusion. Seal laughed, the sound both melodious and slightly mocking. It was a laugh I knew well, one that said she saw right through me. Confusion? Is that what we're calling it now? Rimuru, I've known you long enough to see when there's something more. You're practically glowing. Her words hit home, and I found myself at a loss. Was I that transparent? And if Seal could see it, who else could? The thought made me uncomfortable, vulnerable. I needed to change the subject, to regain some control over this conversation that was quickly spiraling away from me. Clearing my throat, I looked away from Ciel's knowing gaze. That aside, why did you suggest Cynthia do a festival? I asked, hoping to steer us towards safer waters. Ciel raised an eyebrow, a wry smile creeping across her face. Her expression told me she knew exactly what I was doing, but she decided to play along. Changing the subject. Huh? Smooth, Rimuru, real smooth. But fine, I'll play along. I suggested the festival as a way to calm the nerves of the students who were stressed by what was happening recently. A little fun can go a long way in boosting morale. Her explanation made sense, but a nagging worry persisted. But what about Agrona? I pressed, concern creeping into my voice. The thought of our enemy using our moment of relaxation against us sent a chill down my spine. What if he uses this as an opportunity to make his move? Seal shook her head confidently, her eyes glinting with that familiar spark of cleverness that both reassured and intrigued me. He won't. Surprised by her certainty, I raised an eyebrow. And how can you be so sure? Ciel's expression turned sly, and I braced myself for whatever clever plan she had concocted. Well, if you must know, I might have suggested to Cynthia that we invite the council to watch the tournament. It's a precaution, you see. Agrona wouldn't dare make a move with them around. Sometimes, the best defense is a good offense, or in this case, a good audience. Her words impress me, remind me again why Seal was such a valuable ally. You really thought about that, I said, a mix of surprise and admiration in my voice. It was moments like these that reminded me how lucky I was to have Seal on my side. Seal flashed a knowing smile, her eyes softening slightly. The mischief in her gaze was replaced by genuine warmth. I always have your best interests at heart, Rimuru. Someone's got to watch out for you while you're busy having romantic moments in the forest. I felt my face heat up again, the brief respite from embarrassment shattered. I appreciate that, Seal. Really? Well, I should get going. There are some things I need to take care of. And some feelings I need to sort out, I added silently, my mind once again drifting to Sylvia and our moment in the forest. Seal smirked, her eyes dancing with mischief. Oh, leaving so soon, Rimuru? Don't you want to talk more about your moment with Sylvia? I groaned, feeling a mix of embarrassment and frustration washed over me. My cheeks burned, and I could almost feel the tips of my ears turning red. There's nothing to talk about, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tremor I felt in my chest. I turned to leave, hoping to escape this conversation before it went any further. My feet feel heavy, like they were sinking into the garden floor. "You know, I don't mind that," Seal said suddenly, making me stop in my tracks. Her words sent a jolt through me, like a bolt of lightning, and I felt my heart rate pick up. The forest around us seemed to go quiet, as if holding its breath. Without looking back, I asked, "I'm afraid I don't understand what you're saying." But even as the words left my mouth, I knew I was lying to myself. A knot formed in my stomach, a mix of anticipation and dread. Seal laughed lightly. The sound was both comforting and unsettling. It reminded me of wind chimes in a storm. "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Rimuru. That spark between you two? It's pretty obvious." I turned back to face her, trying to keep my expression neutral despite the storm of emotions inside me. My hands were clammy, and I resisted the urge to wipe them on my clothes. "Seal, it's not. I mean, we're just..." I struggled to find the right words, my mind racing with memories of Sylvia's smile, her touch, the almost kiss we'd shared. Each memory was like a snapshot, vivid and charged with emotion. "Friends," Seal finished, her eyebrows raised. She came closer, stopping at arm's length. I could smell the faint scent of lavender that always seemed to surround her. "Come on, Rimuru. I've known you long enough to see when there's something more. Rimuru, it doesn't have to be complicated, you know. Sometimes, it's okay to just let things happen," Seal said, her voice is gentle but firm. Her eyes, usually full of mischief, now hold a warmth that makes my chest tighten. I stood there, my mouth slightly open, words stuck in my throat. My mind raced, trying to form a coherent response, but nothing came out. How could I explain the storm of emotions swirling inside me? It was like trying to describe a hurricane to someone who'd never seen rain. "Just think about it, that's all I asked." Seal gave me a soft smile, patting my shoulders before turning to leave. The warmth of her hand lingered even after she was gone, a stark contrast to the chill that ran through me as I was left alone with my thoughts. As Ciel's words echoed in my mind, I felt a tightness in my chest. My feelings for Sylvia. They were like a tangled ball of yarn, impossible to unravel. Every time I thought I had it figured out, another knot would appear. I ran my fingers through my hair, tugging slightly in frustration. I closed my eyes, picturing Sylvia's face. Her bright eyes, sparkling like stars. Her infectious laugh, a melody that never fails to lift my spirits. The way her brow furrowed when she was concentrated, creating a tiny crease I always had to resist smoothing out. A wave of warmth washed over me, followed quickly by a jolt of fear. This attraction, this pull towards her, it was both exhilarating and terrifying. My heart raced as I recalled our almost kiss. The memory sent butterflies fluttering in my stomach, but also made my palms sweat with anxiety. What if I had leaned in? What if we had crossed that line? The possibilities made me dizzy with a mix of longing and apprehension. I could almost feel the ghost of her breath on my lips, the tension of that moment replaying in my mind. I opened my eyes, feeling the weight of indecision pressing down on me. The sky above seemed to mirror my turbulent emotions. Partly cloudy, neither completely clear nor stormy. Patches of blue peeped through, like hope trying to break through my confusion. I let out a shaky breath, my shoulders slumping. "What should I do, Seal?" I whispered, even though she was long gone. My voice cracked slightly. The question hung there, unanswered, as heavy as the emotions in my heart. The forest seemed to absorb my words, offering no reply. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly feeling very small and very alone. The potential for something beautiful with Sylvia was there, shimmering like a mirage in the desert. But so was the risk of losing what we already had. The thought of ruining our friendship made my stomach churn, like I'd swallowed a stone. As I stood there, lost in my swirling thoughts and conflicting emotions, one thing became clear: whatever decision I made, it would change everything. The path ahead forked, and I stood at the crossroads, paralyzed by the weight of choice. And that realization, more than anything else, filled me with a deep, resonating fear that echoed through every fiber of my being.